Today I took a trip to New York City. It was a trip different than most. I met with a remarkable woman named Ingrid, who offered to be my host. She shared with me the story of her life, which I will now share with you. But here's some things you must know. Well, before I do. Around 11 million deaths in the Holocaust during World War II. You may have thought it was 6, but you're wrong. That was only the Jews. Millions of other people died because someone thought they were wrong too. Are you sitting there wondering, what does this have to do with you? I'll tell you it does. Because if someone told you you were wrong, you would need help to rise above. Think about Cambodia, where they killed people for being too smart. And what about Black Americans in the 50s? Think about that for a start. But no one believes something like this could ever happen to them. Right now you're untouchable. Well, so you think. So I'm asking you to pretend. Pretend for a moment that people discriminated against you. Maybe it would have made you want to stand up for the Jews. But you and I both know that war is long done. You can't change the history of World War II. However, do not fear, your learning has just begun. So though Ingrid lived to tell her tale, she was still impacted because the effects of genocide unfortunately prevailed. So listen to her words and learn from the world's history. Know that you can control tomorrow's mystery.
When Hitler came to power, they were divorced, and the family of my mother was really quite, an ancient, the name was Gronemann, and it was an ancient family, Jewish, in Germany. My grandmother was the first and only female congresswoman in the Weimar Republic, and she was Jewish. She was the first Jew and the first female to have that kind of a position. And her husband had many brothers and was also, in a very old and fabulous family, German family, and they considered themselves German. Not particularly Jewish one way or the other, they were not particularly religious, but they did, adhere to certain standards, but the Jewishness sort of had never come up until Hitler started all this stuff. And so they simply did not understand for a very long time that they better get the hell out of there, or they would be said to be, offered her this job, she took it. Well, she was a secretary sitting in the reception room, the office there, yeah. And then his superior, the general who was in charge of this particular group there in Norway, came to talk to him and looked at my mother, and she had a big nose, and she looked very Jewish. And so this general said, now what's this Jew woman doing in your office? Yeah. And lo and behold, they came to take her to concentration camp. But this being Norway, they decided that, well, she had a little daughter, so they told her that, well, they would not take her to concentration camp now, they would wait until my sister was 2 years old and come and get her and take her to concentration camp. And of course everybody said, go to Sweden, get the hell out of here. Oh no, they wouldn't do that to her. And anyway, they would be long gone by then, and so on. And of course, the day my sister was 2 years old, they came and took her to concentration camp.
So because of the fear that was happening at the time, you had to take your grandmother to Morocco.
Yeah.
Wow.
And she lived there, and I had to stay there.
The purpose of this project for me is really to just send the word to tell people that you don't understand that what you're doing can be really hurtful, and people are all people, and although we're different, that's what makes us unique, and you shouldn't discriminate against a person because they're Jewish or because they have curly hair or because they're tall or short, So that's what it's about for me.
Well, I think what's really interesting to me, even at this point, is a motivation. Why did Hitler decide that this was some kind of a thing to do, and usually it has to do with money, with taking...
Power.
Yeah, with no money, stealing. because one of the consequences in Germany certainly was that everybody felt free to, steal from the Jews, and they were always prosperous. The banks, for example, were run by Jews and so on, and somebody would prefer to, and so the motivation, and then of course the stupid people, the people who come up with these ideas are the intelligent people, and then the people who are just sort of
the masses.
Yeah, they sort of go for it, and it sort of gives them something to do, and a reason for living or what have you. But I could never understand it, what the prejudice thing. Well, one of the things that shaped me was this whole experience of World War II. And you could just see what was going on. The Germans had no business coming to Norway and taking that country over. There was just absolutely no justification. And Hitler just had this thing. This is Nazis, that we are it, and we want to take over the world, literally.
So they came in and they took over the government.
Yeah. And they killed as many people as they found necessary on the way. And they took over everything. So that if you had any, intelligence and clearness of thinking, you looked at this scenario, and it was just crystal clear that this was bad, this was wrong, And then, of course, came, what would you do? I mean, would you die for it, or would you, just sneak away and wait for it to go over, or would you join them, and just in case they, and so that the quandary was personal, but it was pretty clear that one thing was right and one thing was wrong. And now we have...
Take a moment to let it seep in. Watch it over if you have to. Make sure you listen. These words are important. Her story is key. And hopefully you will realize, wow, this does have to do with me. What I tell you next, well, truthfully, it may be hard to digest. But there have been numerous genocides since the Holocaust. People all over killing and dying and being sucked into this madness. But at what cost? So let's refresh our memory. These genocides are only a few that occurred in the 20th century. China, Cambodia, and East Timor, Bosnia, Rwanda, Ottoman Empire, and to name one more, Darfur. The genocide in Darfur is still going on today, at this very second, as time passes away. If we have seen the effects and know the harm, how do we allow these killings to still go on? Before we go, please look at this boy. He is standing there, playing with his toy. As I was leaving the city that day, this little boy struck me in an odd way. This little boy was in no harm and had nothing to dread. He was just playing ball, a regular kid. Then I noticed the yarmulke on his head. But it didn't matter at all that it was there. No one stopped, and no one stared. That was how it should have always been. But that is the past, and here's where you begin. Repost this video, or tweet, or trend. Talk to anyone who has an ear they're willing to lend. People are people regardless of religion or race. We should never base opinions off of the color of a face. Don't be cruel. Avoid that pain. Because even though we are different, inside we're all the same. Remember you have a choice between right and wrong, and remember that right side is where you belong. We've seen through World War II that people are strong when they stand together. So why can't we take the power of the masses and use it to make ourselves better? I know you care, and that you are clever. So let's all be mindful of history, because learning from it is what is going to change our world forever.